My name is Hannah Gray, and today I'm going to be going over a lesson plan on the atomic bomb given by the New York Times. The reason I chose to do an overview of this lesson plan is because of the many English components that it has in it, and as an English teacher, I really like to bring history into the classroom as much as I possibly can. So, to begin, I'm going to just go over some of the things that we're looking for. We're looking to see that the lesson plan contains a writing component, and that writing component requires students to communicate through writing as a scientist or a historian or a mathematician within their discipline in the real world. We're looking to see that the lesson plan requires students to interact at some point as a community, so we want some collaborative discussion going on, and we need to know that they will be able to share their knowledge and their findings using the language of the discipline, which would be English. Does this lesson plan include a project-based activity, and are they doing the work that a real scientist, mathematician, or historian would do? And then the last thing we're going to look for is the ultimate evaluation, and that is whether or not the lesson requires the students to think like a scientist, a historian, or a mathematician, and whether or not it requires students to learn or use or know a specific set of behaviors dedicated to the discipline or the area of study within its discipline. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and briefly go over this lesson plan, and as we get to one of these points on this checklist, we will cross it off. So this is the beginning of the lesson pack given by the New York Times on the atom bomb. And basically what you would do as a teacher is right at the top, you will teach about the atomic bomb and its long shadow with this exciting Common Core aligned package from the New York Times. So the first thing it does is it gives you an issue from March 16th, 2015, and it tells you what the package includes. As a teacher, I really like this because I don't want to have to look through an entire 12 to 15 page lesson plan just to see what's in it. So it includes a 4-page article on the atomic bomb with a map and a timeline. It gives you a primary source, which is a petition from 70 nuclear scientists to President Truman, and an in-depth lesson plan on the atomic bomb. And it tells you right up front that it gives you a debate. Now, I would say that debate is that project, but to make sure it has all the qualifications, we're going to continue going before we cross that off the list. So it starts with giving you a 1945 issue on the atom bomb from the New York Times, and it's just kind of explaining everything that went with it. It even gives teachers an option to show a video on the Manhattan Project, which had to do with the atom bomb, and it gives you the option to download that 1945 petition to Harry Truman that we talked about earlier. And then it gives you, just the rest of that article, some pictures, and this is my favorite part, is this timeline. I feel like having extra things like Albert Einstein and things in there just kind of gives the students a feel for how long ago this stuff was when it happened. It gives pictures to show you what it's like. It talks about the Cold War. And then there's some stuff that, some students, depending on the age, might not be able to really understand. But a lot of it is self-explanatory. It finishes off the timeline. And here is a primary and a secondary source page that they would be able to use for a writing project if they wanted to. Now, after reading this, you have discussion questions. You have 5. How would you sum up the scientist's purpose in petitioning the president after looking at that petition? How would you describe the tone of the petition? Under what circumstances do the writers say that the use of the atomic bomb against Japan might be justified? What solemn responsibility does the U.S. bear according to the scientists, and why? And what does the petition add to your understanding as a student of the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki as outlined in the upfront article? I want to take a look at that third question. Under what circumstances do the writers say that the use of the atomic bomb against Japan might be justified? I feel like this is where we can go back to this checklist and we can mark off that last thing, the ultimate evaluation. Does the lesson require the students to think like a scientist or a historian? And that second part of that question, can the atomic bomb against Japan be justified? And I definitely think that's what that does. So we're going to continue on. It gives you kind of a second little lesson plan for the atom bomb. Before they read their article, it's going to give you some vocab. They're going to get to watch a video, and then they get to read and discuss. Do you think Albert Einstein felt compelled to reach out to President Roosevelt about the prospect of the atomic bomb? Explain why the Manhattan Project was kept top secret. Describe how the concept of mutually assured destruction shaped the nuclear arms race. Analyze why the U.S. is particularly concerned about North Korea's possession of nuclear weapons. And then there's even more questions that you have. How would you sum up the scientist's purpose? How would you describe the tone of the petition? Under what circumstances do the writers say that the use of the atomic bomb might be justified? And these are the same questions that were up at the top, but basically it's giving you a bigger breakdown underneath it. And then one thing I like the most is the extend and assess section. You can do a writing prompt, you can do a classroom debate, or you can do a quiz, or you can just do all three. It's really up to you. So now we're going to go back here. We've already marked off that fourth thing on the checklist, and now we're going to mark off, does the lesson plan require students to interact at some point as an intellectual community, and do they share their knowledge, learning, and findings using the language of the discipline? And I definitely feel like that's what all of these can do. That's what the discussion will do. That's what the classroom debate will do. They'll choose a side. Was the use of the atomic bomb inevitable once the technology existed? And I definitely think that's also where we can mark off whether or not the lesson plan includes a project-based activity. Are they doing the real work that real scientists, mathematicians, or historians would do? And historians, if they were to have a debate about this before it even happened, I mean, that's what they would do. Is the use of the atomic bomb inevitable? Is it something that should be done? Yes or no? And that's where that would come in. And it even gives you a bigger background on this debate. Should the U.S. have dropped the atom bomb? What I would do is I would change it, instead of should they have dropped the atom bomb, to pretend like it's before the atomic bomb was dropped. Should we drop the atom bomb instead of should we have? So they'll analyze the author's claims. From this up here, what they did was they gave you yes from one historian, and they gave you no from a different historian answering that question. And this is just to get, for them to read deeper, get some background information on everything. And then they would analyze the debate, they would read, discuss, they would have a core skill practice. That is their project. Project to distribute, analyze author's claims, analyze Walker's views, and then you have another extend and assess. Writing prompt, evaluate the debater's arguments in an essay, assess whether his reasoning is valid and whether it's supported with solid evidence, and then that is definitely where we could take that last thing off the list. Does the lesson plan contain a writing component? Does that component require students to communicate through writing as a scientist, a historian, or a mathematician would within their discipline in the real world? So that's that writing component, and it does require students to communicate through writing as a historian, because they're saying, they're taking that argument in that essay and they're analyzing it and they're assessing whether the reason is valid or not, and they're supporting that with evidence. And then there's even another debate that they could do, and then they could vote. After exploring both sides of the debate, they can weigh in online, or they could just vote in class, whichever you would want them to do. So I would definitely use this lesson plan because it covers all of this, but it does cover more than just these four things. It covers basically everything. There's a lot of English in it, there's a lot of history in it, it has a lot of those Common Core standards that they need for history and English. So I definitely think that it is something that I would do.